Have you ever thought about how Monday's actions may affect Friday's speed? In this video, I want to talk about something that we do on Mondays to test our athletes to see how they're recovered from Friday's game that influences the decisions we make throughout the week. Hey coaches, Coach Martens here. Thank you for joining me on my channel today. This channel is dedicated to coaches looking for ways to help their athletes perform their best on game days. So today I'm not really looking to talk about how to develop speed or how to build speed. That's a totally different video or topic altogether. But today what I want to make sure we're doing is we're discussing how we can actually assess or evaluate athletes' recovery. So, and I'm a big believer in if you don't measure it, how are you supposed to know? So I'm going to talk you through the setup, the guidelines of kind of how we do it. We do it on Mondays. It's incorporated into Monday's practice for all of our varsity athletes. Some of the requirements that you need some form of testing for a fly. They need that run-in time. So they get that full sprint into it. Something is going to start the timer and something's going to stop. It's really hard to do with a stopwatch. So some type of technology. We use a free lap system, and that gives us the ability to test lots and lots of athletes. We've tested anywhere from 20 to 100 athletes in a very short amount of time, and it's very, very efficient. So you need something like that. Giving you some background on our team here, we're a small town Central Wisconsin football team. And we've kind of shifted gears and shifted philosophy, and obviously we were fortunate to have some guys that have some speed. But the point of this video is not necessarily like how to build it, but how to make sure you don't interfere with it. This year, in this particular year, this was 2019 season. We put some simple concepts in, and the point of this video is not concepts, it's not scheme, it's never interfering with speed. So, but you'll see these are some very, very basic offensive schemes made big by playmakers, and it's kind of an air raid philosophy of get the ball to your playmakers, but if those playmakers are beat up, if they're tired, if they haven't recovered, and if you haven't properly built that into your sequencing, they're still not going to be quite as effective. So the point of our Monday testing is really to make sure that these types of plays are never interfered with. So from any point of the field, backed up on your own goal line, middle of the field, anywhere, you're a scoring potential as long as you have your athletes out there at full potential. So that's really what our goal is. And like I said, very basic scheme, and get your ball to playmakers and make sure those playmakers are fresh. And this is a great play to illustrate this. We treat every position essentially the same in terms of speed. So we test our skill guys, we test our quarterbacks, our running backs, and even our linemen. So this is a nice little clip of a lineman here in the middle getting upfield. We emphasize speed on our line. That's 20 yards in front of our downfield, making a block for our quarterback. And, it doesn't make a big block, but makes a difference for another big play. So that's really the point of all of this, is making sure that those athletes remain fresh. So I want to start. Let's talk about the setup here. Usually on a Monday, if it's nice out, we'll go outside. If that's kind of our favorite, the kids like to spike up, and that's how important they feel the Monday days are. Is that a lot of the guys that are doubling up in football and track, and even some of our football guys that don't run track, they go out and buy a pair of spikes because they want to be fast. So the setup, we run 10 yards. We used to run meters, but the reason for the change, and it's not necessarily you can pick anything you want, but it's not necessarily what you do, it's how you do it. So we picked something that was just really fast to set up, so I don't need a tape measure for anything. So for people that don't know, all the markings, especially in this open stretch, this home stretch on the 100, has markings on it. So the markings that we use on our track, they're blue. The blue triangles are 10 meters apart. And that's a standard for track hurdle spacing. It's the boys' marks. So they might be yellow, they might be blue, they might be green on your track. But so yeah, we place we measure between two blues. That is exactly 10 yards. And then if we want to back them up 30 more yards, we just count 1, 2, 3 more spaces, and we have perfect spacing, which works out really, really well, that we don't have to measure anything. If we're indoors, we'll just take a tape measure, pull it 30 feet, which is 10 yards, and be all set. So let's actually talk about the test itself. So the test itself is really simple. Like I said, we use a free lap system. If you don't have a timing system, that kind of puts a little damper on this workout, but there's all kinds of systems out there. There's Dasher, you can look into but it's got to have the capability of doing a flying sprint. So a flying sprint meaning it starts the time when the athlete passes the first cone, and then it stops when it passes the second cone. So we use free lap. I know there's other systems out there. That's just what we use. So with the free lap, the kids each wear a chip, and they can start anywhere they want. But typically, most of our athletes start at about the 40-yard mark. So remember, these are set up. We use blue triangles. So this is 10, 20, 30, 40 meters, or sorry, yards, and they just sprint. So they sprint as fast as they possibly can through the cones. And then, like I said, the neat part about it is once they pass this first cone, it starts their chip. They pass the second cone, it stops their chip. And then a coach is here at the finish line writing down their times. And typically we do 3 times. Again, the goal is not to get them tired. The goal is to test their speed. So you've got to be okay with allowing them full recovery, which typically is 4 maybe 5 minutes. And I know some coaches aren't okay with that, but remember, the goal is not to interfere with Friday. So this is a sprint, a full out sprint. They're going to be at top speed, and we're trying to measure up what they're capable of doing off of that weekend recovery. So now let's jump into what we do with that information. So as I said before, I don't think it's necessarily about what you're testing. In this circumstance, as long as they're running at max speed, and I should say sprinting at max speed, that's what's important. So you could do a 10-yard, 20 meter, it doesn't matter the distance. But I feel it needs to be at top speed because you're testing whether their nervous system's recovered, whether their whole body is ready to go coming back from that Friday. So we test the yard fly, like I said. I showed you the setup, and now there's 2 ways that we monitor this information, and one of them is kind of more in real time and a little less formal, and then the other obviously is a lot more formal, a lot more detailed, and I'll show you both of those, and I'll put both links in the description if you guys want that. That's totally yours to keep. So the first way we do it is this is actually a sheet that we would have laminated. So we have a bunch of copies of this. It comes with us wherever we go with our free lap system, and what you see here is I have different lanes and different percentages and things, but this gives us the flexibility to test anything we want and still kind of maintain the same purpose. So we can test meter flies, we can test 10-yard flies, I can do a 35-meter fly just by changing this. And it'll adjust those times for me. So, and that's a really common one. I'll explain that in a different video. But we do yards, again, because I said of the setup, but this is the column that we're really looking at to monitor health. So let's say an athlete normally, or let's say their PR comes across in, let's just say 1 flat. 1 flat is their PR. So how we use this chart is we find the time that's closest to it. So 0.99, kind of in this window right here, this 0.99101 range. And it also converts it to miles per hour. So that's 20.6 or 20.3 miles per hour. And sometimes there's that, stick your chest out match with your buddies that, I can run 20 miles an hour. You can only run 19. So it's kind of builds up this competitiveness. And we use that mostly in our summertime, but it's hard to flip that competitive switch off, which a lot of us have. And a lot of us love sports for that reason. But so again, going back to this athlete, if they're sprinting on this Monday workout and they sprint across the line and they come in at 105, I'm feeling okay about that because in the parentheses here, that's their drop off. And up here, I have the drop off set to 8%. And that's another number that you can play with. Some people claim if you want to be in that speed category, you've got to be in that like 92 to 96% of your max speed, which is about that 8% drop off. So we err on the side of the 8. Again, we're working with high school kids. But if you wanted to cut that off to 6, all those times will self-adjust, or 10 if you want to give them a little more leeway. But we usually go around 8% just to kind of give them that cushion of, okay, that yes, they are high school kids. So again, coming back to that athlete that runs a 1 flat, if they run a 1 flat in 0.107 or 108, 109, I'm still feeling pretty good about their recovery and what they can do. The big ones are things like a 115, a 120, and I'm like, okay, that's a huge red flag for that athlete. That if they run 1 at that time, I'm already considering shutting them down for that day and making sure I'm monitoring them and checking in on them on Tuesday. But if they run 2, then that's a for sure. Like the first one, okay, maybe it's a fluke, but the second one, okay, I'm a little concerned about that. So that would be an example of what we would do. And this goes all the way from, we'll never have anybody running these. What I think Bolt runs the 10 meter fly in 0.82 So yeah, we're never going to get anybody in this range. But it goes from there all the way to a 2. And again, if anybody's running that, that's that's not going to happen. So everybody's covered. All the bases are covered here. You can assess your 150 guys with your 120s, with your 1 flats, and our best 10 yard fly we've ever had. We're getting down into like the .90s. So we're getting into this range, which is pretty fast. So especially that athlete, if they're in this window and they're in the 105 range, I'm starting to throw a red flag of concern for that athlete. So that's the way we can do it in real time. And I'll tell you that the athletes start to learn what their best is. They know that, just as well as they know their address. You say, hey, what's your 10 fly time? And they'll tell you. So if you don't remember, they will. But, that's also something that I've learned over time is that if I really want to know my athletes, I know this number for them, that I know where they're at and what it takes for them to be considered good to go or they're fatigued. And then the second phase, and this is something you can do behind the scenes or not at all, it's up to you, is I monitor that over time. And this is just kind of a sample of what that might look like. Is okay if and this is all everything up here updates. This is their fastest. It compiles from here. We keep track of it over time, so it's kind of fun to see. Especially this athlete here went from a 118 to a .97 to a .92 over a span of 3 years, and that's significant change. So we talk about like a 1.2 being 17 miles per hour, and they dropped to a .92 over the next 2 seasons. We're talking a significant change in terms of miles per hour, which is only going to make, even some more significant changes on a football field. So that's something we like to monitor through here. We do it for our summer and winter programming as well. But what I like to see, and I've got this color coded where if they're consistently coming across in greens, I'm feeling really good. So green means they're in that window. They're close enough to their PR to be considered healthy. And again, you can set those windows to whatever you want. I just picked, I believe it's like 6% and 10%, just kind of a window it around 8%, which is that definition of speed. So anything coming across as green means they're close to their window. Yellow, it's kind of a little flag goes up, and red is kind of the big red flag. So things that I would be looking for is like this athlete here, a span of 3 greens in a row. I'm feeling really good about that athlete in terms of what they can do, but especially if they're consistently green and they come back red, that's something that I would really want to be concerned with or have a conversation with that athlete. And I'm not implying that red means shut them down for good. That's have a conversation with them, make sure you're figuring out if they're sleeping, if what they're doing over the weekend to make sure that they're recovering, and just be aware that maybe that week, especially this here. I mean, there are situations where we have athletes that are fairly fast, and there was something going on in this situation where they just weren't able to be at that all-time best. And you can look at where they were from 2018 to 2019, and it shows up. It shows up on the spreadsheets. So, like I said, yellows and greens I'd consider good. So, you look at like this athlete here, all yellows and greens across the board. So, I'm feeling pretty good about that, the recovery and the health of that athlete in this particular season, versus all red or even a red and maybe a yellow. But now you can really start to monitor your athletes as a whole. And then even at the bottom, I've got it set to for teams. This is your average team. Like, so on average, our team was pretty much a yellow or a green. So you can look at those kinds of things and really determine where your team is at as far as recovery goes. So, and I have a blank sheet here that, and the neat part about it is, let's say, I'm just going to make up some numbers here. Let's say a kid comes across in 0.9, 1.1, 1.2, and 1.3. So right now they're all green because that's the first time you've done it. But week 2 is really when things will start to code. So let's say this athlete, this 0.9 athlete, comes across in 1 flat while they're in a red. If the 110, let's say they PR and they run 109. Okay, well that's their new mark, but obviously they're in the green. And then when you start to think though, so if week 3 this athlete comes back and does a 120, okay, that's in the red for both times. but they'll also adjust based on that new PR. So you'll kind of see. I'm never really looking backwards. I'm always looking at current. And then possibly trends, because obviously if they PR, the colors might change based on those new percentages. But you can monitor all your athletes, real quick in terms of where they're at. So 125, 130, now they're in the yellow. 135, they're in the red. So it kind of gives you that idea that that peace of mind or that assurance that, okay, maybe I should be concerned or not concerned about that athlete. But those are those two different ideas, that you can either be at that baseline just using this sheet level, or you can go and actually type it into the spreadsheet and monitor them that way over time. All right, so there you go. There's our Monday workout that we do. Again, we use it to monitor athletes and their recovery, and it's very, very nice to know as a coach that your athletes are ready and refreshed, and they're ready to go for the week, and it also helps guide your weeks. So I couldn't, as a responsible coach, know that the majority of my team are in that red zone. And then demand them to have a difficult practice or a heavy hitting practice on Tuesday. How could you do that to your athletes, especially if your main emphasis is speed on Friday? So if you're looking for that high explosive, big performance, the most important day of the week is Friday, then I really suggest that you look into implementing this workout in a very simple, very fast. It doesn't take that long to do. So it's definitely something that will give you a positive value to your programs. So thank you again for watching me on my channel today. And if you want to see more videos and highlights about speed on the football field, I highly recommend you check out these two videos here. It's just titled Top NFL Speed Kills Moments, and it's just a great reminder for the effects that speed has on a football field. And remember, coaches, to make sure that every decision you make is so that your athletes deliver their best performances on game days.